All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Let you guys all settle in a little bit. Grab your coffee, your drink, your Friday afternoon drink. I know my panelists already had a few. Just kidding. Okay. We got a huge audience today, so we appreciate everybody joining. Thank you all for attending today's session. And for those of you who are just logging in right now, we'll begin in just 60 seconds. All right, let's get the show on the road. Thank you all for joining today's session. We appreciate your time on a Friday. I think that today's topic is going to be super interesting. And for all of you who are joining us, I want to thank everybody in advance. Today's session is going to be recorded as well, and I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. I think my panelists are ready. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to another installment of Traxo Office Hours series. Today we're going to be covering the exciting topic, and I use exciting in quotes, of American Airlines loyalty program changes and the impact on corporate travel programs. American Airlines loyalty program changes were just delayed on to July 11th. So you'll see on our screen here, we have a nice big red X on the May 1st date, adding even more certainty to this hard to navigate solution. Still, the impending changes we think are going to have a direct impact on your travelers and of course on your employees' ability to earn miles. Our expert panel will uncover all aspects of these changes, and we'll talk about the more recent changes and with the emphasis on how travel managers can understand the complexities to ensure long-term viability of managed programs. We have a bunch of topics that we're going to be talking about, but before I do that, I want to just talk a little bit about some housekeeping announcements. Today's recording is going to be made available, so if you happen to want to share this with others, you can, and they will be available on the Traxo Resource Center as well as on our YouTube channel. Also, the Q&A feature is now open, and we'll be monitoring this throughout the webinar so that questions that you have, please go ahead and fill them into the box there, and our panelists or myself will go ahead and answer them for you as we go through today's session. So let's go ahead and introduce today's panelists. I want to first of all congratulate both Paula and Louise for the significant professional milestones. So congratulations, Paula, for completing your GTP just yesterday. Well done. And of course, for Louise for starting her new consulting company this year. I'm going to ask the panelists to do a quick 30-second intro of yourself, and we're going to go in the order of alphabet last name. And for your convenience, we've kind of organized the screen that way too. So we'll go ahead and start with you, Paula.
Thank you for having me today. I'm a corporate travel buyer for a Fortune 100 company. We have all the major airlines as part of our program. We have an international, a global program, and we're more associate forward than a lot of companies are. But we're looking forward to being here and having this conversation today.
Great. Should I go next?
Go ahead, Louise.
Great. So, hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Louise Miller. I've spent 5 of the past 7 years as a partner in a consulting firm specializing across the entire travel value chain, travel, meetings, payments, and expense. And I spent 25 years inside 2 of the top 3 TMCs, reporting to the CEO most of that time. My partner in our new business, Results Plus Consulting, is Kim Hamer, and she spent 20 years as a buyer for global programs. So together, we're focused on innovations that are fueling the shift from omni-channel which means bookings that are in the wild, where we've lost line of sight, to multi-channel, which is making sure the bookings come back into the managed channel in some way, shape, or form. Thus, I'm here on this Traxo webinar. I live in Dallas, Texas, and when I'm not working, I focus on education. I substitute teach, and I'm on the board of an educational foundation looking to close the achievement gap for low-income families. And my family hosts international high school and college students who have now become our family. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Louise. On to you, Todd.
Hi, everybody. This is Todd Shingleton. I work for Wabtec. It's probably not a household name, but when I started at Wabtec in 1988, my hair was about the color of Aash's hair. And after 36 years, I've sort of seen a lot come and go, but I've always been in the risk side of the business, and more so now in global security. And I was in for about 35 years, solely focused on both EHS and security. But as we grew to now what was when we started about a $400,000 a year company revenues, now it's 10 plus billion. We've kind of bifurcated it and have I do solely security now instead of safety. So I'm excited about the technology, and Traxo is one of those.
Great. Thank you, Todd. And I look forward to having my hair look like yours as the years progress. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some baseline, right? So I want to kind of set the stage a little bit. And of course, having today's conversation is only possible if we have some of these definitions clear in our mind. So from an NDC perspective, obviously everybody knows this acronym by now and probably is well versed on it. But just to kind of make sure that our audience has a clear picture, what we're talking about is we're talking about an API capability that the airlines are deploying to modernize how they can sell the air products to the infrastructure and to the travel industry. And then, of course, we can't talk about NDC without mentioning the term EDIFACT. And when we talk about EDIFACT, we're just simply referring to the technology used by GDSs to book travel that does have a limited capability and a high cost to airlines. And of course, we're going to touch on these two topics as we move forward. And then from a perspective, right? So I think this is important to understand, where we want to kind of get into the heads of what is the airlines looking for? What are they looking to do? And simply put, the airlines are looking for the ability to sell more products and services, and they want to be able to increase their margins as well. And then on the other hand, they're also looking to minimize distribution costs. One of the major obstacles that airlines have is that the current booking technology that is used by travelers and by corporations within their business travel structure has limited capabilities. And of course, we can discuss that. The other thing we need to mention is that the global airline retailing market size is growing. And these are just some numbers to share with you all to kind of understand from an airline perspective, what are they looking to do? How are they looking to sell? And what is it that they're actually trying to achieve? And very simply, they see this big picture of $40 billion a year, and they want to make sure that their particular airline is aligned with a percentage of that. And of course, the larger, the better. So a couple of questions that I have for the panelists today. And this question goes to you, Louise and Paula. How are the limitations of EDIFACT preventing the airlines from their desire to sell more products? Louise, I'll let you start with that one.
Great. Well, usually I start with the example of low-cost carriers. They've had limited or no content in EDIFACT and the GDS, and some of them just don't distribute that way at all. They have the ability to change their prices and their bundles. Their .com site is their channel, and it always has been. There are hundreds of airlines that are in that situation. The thing that's unique about the US is that we have 3 global airlines all based here. Most countries have 1 carrier at most. That's a global home carrier. So the competition here is very steep. And when you add our regional and low-cost carriers, it's even more significant. So that competition has driven the major airlines who provided us with what's called content parity for many years, that now they've been driven to do things more like the low-cost carriers so that they can control their offers better. So long story short, it's also a way for the carriers to get away from a lowest logical fare display if people book on their .com site. You know, if I'm already loyal to carrier X and I go to their .com site, I'm probably going to book that same carrier. We talk a lot about bundles and continuous pricing, but this is a big advantage, getting out of that lowest logical fare display. When you book on EdEffect today, you're really just buying a ticket. When you book on a .com, you get more fares, more options, etc. And obviously, either connecting through an API or using the GDS NDC channel is going to bring us some and many of those same advantages into managed travel. So those are some of the limitations that EdEffect puts on the airlines and why their .com sites and then NDC are helpful, giving them those new capabilities.
Yeah, and Paula, from as a travel buyer, as somebody who's managing a very large travel program, what limitations are you seeing as it relates to EdEffect?
I think this now changes from the limitation to an experience. You know, everybody talks about an experience, and now the airlines, they can capitalize on when you go to their site, you can now buy the internet. You can now go ahead and do your baggage. Maybe I wasn't going to consider checking my bag, but now I can do it at a discount. Why not do it? I think it really allows the carriers the opportunity to capitalize on the emotions today and not just a transaction. You know, when you're in the GDS EdEffect, this is what you get. That's it. This expands what they can offer. And again, capitalizing on the emotional or the quick to buy.
Yeah. And just yesterday, American Airlines had their earnings call, and their chief commercial officer was quoted as saying on that call that they were able to lower the distribution costs, by the way, 7% was the number that he used. And they are also noticing that 60% of their customers today are Advantage customers, and they produce 2/3 of their total revenue, right? So when you think about what makes a customer, some of these numbers kind of are leading their strategy and their direction as well. All right, great. So Louise, I'm going to turn this over to you now, and I'm going to ask you to kind of talk about what can today's travel buyer do?
Yeah, that's great. I think the first thing is to really understand your starting point. Ask questions like, how much of your bookings are going through your preferred channels for air and hotel? Has there been a shift up or down in the past 18 months as travel rebounded? How much noise are your travelers and your leadership team making about lower rates or more options in general about when they go direct? Do you have a pre-trip approval tool? And does your policy guide or does your policy direct travelers to use preferred suppliers in your managed channel? And I think what you can actually do depends on your starting point and what's been happening. At Results Plus, we've been doing a lot of research for the past 2 months or so, and we've kind of honed in on several different options of what can you actually do depending on the answers to those first questions. First and foremost, you can forego the absolute lowest logical fare, since content parity is gone and the airlines don't promise to put all their fares in every channel. But you direct your travelers to use the content you're giving them in their managed channel. And over time, you can add GDS NDC or whatever your TMC is willing to connect, right? Some TMCs and OBTs do direct airline APIs, and some are just offering GDS NDC. So, and some have a mix. So there is pain with this option, and half of the hotel bookings have been missing for most of us anyway. So the question is, if you have really high savings rates, then you might be able to justify keeping travelers in your air channel and requiring them to continue to do that, even if you can't guarantee the absolute lowest fare across. I'd say the second most common option is to acknowledge that you have an omni-channel program, meaning that you do have bookings in the wild, whether you like it or not. Certainly hotel is there, and 10% of air was in the wild before this all happened anyway. And then you use tools like Traxo to gain a line of sight into your spend. And, but you still have a managed travel option for travelers who want all their trip elements in one place. They like the idea of TMC servicing. They benefit from easier compliance to travel risk programs and the protection of single sign-on. Let's not overlook that. So there's a lot of companies that are option 2. They're just looking for a way to enrich your managed channel. But it's kind of a slow burn trying to get players back in. And then last, certainly not least, it's, companies who are adding another channel alongside their TMC. And, some of them are looking at channels that are airline direct, the forbusiness.com parts of the airline sites. Some of them are looking at adding booking tools that have API connections. Either way, mandate payments if you can, and company emails for all bookings. If you do those 2 things, then regardless of whether you're option 1, 2, or 3, you have some flexibility.
Great. And I know that your company has done some studies, and I'm showing that this kind of speaks for itself. Paula, for you, when are you agreement with what Louise is saying? And are you dealing with these kind of results that you see here, where there's a price discrepancy between a corporate booking tool and a direct airline channel?
Definitely agreeing with what Louise was saying. And we've had to make decisions we probably wouldn't have made 6 months ago because of this. There's so much, so many emails, so many calls. Oh, I can do it. I can get it here better. I can do it here. I can do your job. All that stuff. We went ahead and turned on Concur Evolution of Travel. So we are an early adapter to that. So we're trying to kind of solve for some of those. I can do it. I can get it better. Those situations that we've been put into. And so we're battling that now, because we don't want people to go outside the program. And we want to make sure we keep them inside, not only for business continuity, but to ensure our contracts are there, that we're adhering to our contracts and we're making our goals and we're managing our program. And a lot of what's going on now is making it more challenging for a travel buyer to, if you had a non-mandated program, you're going to be suffering right now. Or you're going to be transitioning into more of a managed or a mandated program where you're looking at expense reports. People who go outside the process now have to get approvals to get payment. That's how we're handling it now.
Yeah, and so we've been talking a little bit about things from the travel perspective. I want to bring Todd into this conversation now from a risk perspective. So Todd, from your side, as a risk professional, and you see all these examples and you see all these scenarios. One, I'm assuming you're probably happy that you don't have to deal with all this craziness, but tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from your side of the world.
Good question. I don't know that it's less crazy. It's probably more crazy. When we got into this, we looked at the duty of care, and it's outside our walls. I mean, I sort of came from a background where if it happened outside our walls, well, it wasn't our problem. But we had, just think of this right now, an operations manager that went to a place and digested something that created a parasite on his spine, and he never returned to work. And to me, that is a human element. It's people first, and so we have to do better care about where these people are going, instead of looking at an expense report and say, oh, I see that you went to Pakistan. You shouldn't have gone there. Well, we're doing it after the fact. And so I guess in a simple world, we had simple tools. We wanted to put light, we light a kerosene lamp. I get that figured out. But in a more complex world, we require complex tools. And I don't know necessarily how they work. I just know that they do. So when our travel management company, after COVID, just couldn't respond to our needs, we had people flying everywhere. We did not know where they were going preventatively. We brought in international SOS, so that was good about pre-trip travel and so on. But that only worked if the data went through our travel management company and then was sent to international SOS. If they didn't go through that travel management company, and this is the same kind of situation we're at now, then those people don't get pre-trip advisories. Traxo came along and sort of unintentionally, intentionally came up with a product that it seems like every time something changes in the industry, I look to Traxo for an answer. And I could go through a couple different scenarios, but that's your setup for later on, Aash, if you ever want people to be asking how it works. But it does, and it's I'm glad that you're on the team.
Well, thank you for that, and that was good insight. So let's, and I know we talk about a lot of things as it relates to NDC, but I think that the the direction that everybody's going in, whether an airline has a certain strategy or a different strategy by a different airline. I mean, every airline I think is going to have a different strategy, but the end goal or the goalpost or the touchdown zone is the ability for an airline to retail, right? So we're going through what we would call a retailing revolution. This term has been coined by many different folks at this point now, and we see a acceleration towards this direction of, I want to be able to retail, I want to be able to sell more product and services. And it's not limited to just a couple of airlines. I mean, the number of airlines that are making investments into NDC or into retailing is growing, and I think continues to grow. And of course, this is all good for the airline. It's good for travelers in a lot of different ways, but it's not so good for those who are trying to manage travel, because you have a lot of different scenarios playing out. Sometimes it could be a distribution cost fee that's being deployed. Sometimes it could be an elimination of content that's being deployed. So Paula, for you, when we talk about retailing, do travel managers view that as exciting, or do they look at it as, I'm not really into this and what the heck is going on?
The scary part of this is managing it. So we don't allow our associates to purchase internet before, unless you don't purchase it unless you're going to need it. And you're not going to know that until you're on the plane. So there's a lot of additional expenses that are going to be included in the new retailing platform that we didn't have to worry about before. Now we have to make sure that people are only buying the airfare because we still have to manage to our policy. How do you manage your travel policy when the airline can say, here's your new fare, it's $400, and it's going to include a seat upgrade, earlier group, that none of that's covered in our policy, or that's something we shouldn't be having in our, we don't allow our associates to get. How do we manage that now? Like, that's the problem, that's the challenge we have now. As a traveler, as a personal traveler, it's great for me as a leisure traveler because I can get everything at one stop. But when you're looking at the corporate, it's going to be additional expenses, and how do you track that?
Yeah, so the answer is not so excited, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And Louise, from your side, we've heard a little bit from United and Delta recently on their NDC strategies. Give us some of your insights into what you're seeing as it relates to this. I know the focus of today's conversation is around American, but I do want to be able to add a couple of different airlines into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, as you have on the slide, there's a lot of airlines that either have already modernized their retailing platform, and there's plenty that are still working on it, and they probably always will. They pick companies like Alcelia or Amadeus, and they are working with an IT provider to modernize their own ability to merchandise and sell their product. And then once they've modernized their own platform, then they are also in a parallel path trying to figure out, are they only going to allow API connections, or are they going to participate in the GDS or other aggregators NDC channels? And so, the GDS take a lot of heat, and so do the TMCs and the OBTs, but really, until an airline modernizes its tech stack to begin with, you can't do any of this. So yeah, sure, I see that Delta and United are saying more, but so are these 60 other airlines. And this is going to be several years of airlines one by one doing things. And depending on who they pick for their own internal hosting system upgrade, depends on what features they have. So there is never going to be a total standard. So, we really need to adjust our thinking. And I think the last thing is that EDIFACT will be around for a very long time, not because the GDS is antiquated. That makes me crazy when people say that. It's because the airlines, they have to operate it until the airlines modernize their systems. So EDIFACT will be around for a long time, and we need it because not every airline, there's hundreds and hundreds of airlines, can modernize at the same time. So yeah, it's an interesting time. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, and and to your point, I think everybody's going to take a different path, right? So we're entering into this world of, or this timeline of chaos, whether it's 2, 3 years, whatever that number might be. We just know that we're going to be dealing with that. So a question that we have coming up here from one of our guests, and by the way, for those of you on the call today, if you want to add any questions, please go ahead. We'll take the questions as they come in. So question for the panel is that the challenge for legacy TMC is that they're not agile enough to cope with modern distribution. Question for all of you: do you have an NDC? Do you see NDC change happening in hotels, cars, and other categories, or is this a travel? And I'm adding the last part, or is this a travel related thing? Who wants to take
Well, if
that?
you look at how you book your hotels, you already get what the airlines are trying to do. You can
Yeah.
book an upgrade, you can book whatever breakfast, the hotels already have that included in it. So it's kind of like the airlines are trying to catch up to what the hotels already had the capability of doing.
That's right. And for years, have we not all seen hotel attachment rates be extremely low through the managed flow? I mean, we all know this has been happening. So to what you just said, I think the hotels have been a little bit ahead of this curve than the airlines have from a distribution perspective. All right. So question for you, Paula. How do you manage the purchase of ancillaries? The tools that you need to allow travel policy to work with unbundling, how would you say this is allowed within a travel policy? Say booking a flight plus seat. If so, what type of seat? Where on the plane?
So in our policy, we clearly define, and we just also did a 3-month review of our policy because we know NDC was going to be impacting it this year, and we were turning on Concur Evolution for Travel. So we revised our policy to specifically address some of these challenges. We highlight that you can't pay for a seat. That's, if you want to pay for it, that's great. You'll do it on your own dime. It's not something that's that you can expense. We also have a team that's doing more of an audit for our airfare. We can't audit every expense report that comes in. We have the rules built in, but we are randomly auditing some. And if people are trying to go ahead and expense that seat, if we catch it, we'll send it back and not pay for it. But we specifically revised our policy to include some of the things, that the bundling, and that you can only expense basic airfare. But on the plus side, having the NDC content, now our associates' entitlements to their statuses are now recognized. So now we don't have to worry about them buying that seat. So that's already included, because if they've got status, they know that now.
Great. Louise, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I think in the end, we have to think about travel policies in general. And as Paula has had to do, on one end of the spectrum, I see companies that were already paying for these things. The managers were signing off on them, even though things like premium economy and paid seat assignments and Wi-Fi, and none of that was even in the policy, right? But the actual behavior of the travelers and their managers was such that what's happening kind of became the policy. So we see a lot of policies allowing those things. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we see, especially if they're client billable travel or defense contractors, then we see more of what Paula's doing, where the policy says you have to just buy the airfare by itself. You can't buy all those other add-ons. And so there's a pretty wide range, but I would say more than 80% of the companies that are in our research, which is more than 2,000 companies, 80% of those are allowing travelers to get reimbursed for a lot of those services. For example, a Wi-Fi subscription for a year, or a better seat assignment if the flight's more than 2 hours. A lot of nuances like that are getting into the policy. So
Yeah, and
interesting.
then the technology. Go ahead, Paula. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we looked at our policy, we really changed. We're an associate forward company, but we now are saying you have to ask for permission and not forgiveness. In the past, prior to all of the changes, it was ask for forgiveness, not permission. So we've really changed our view, and we've always had a mandated policy, but now we're working on the compliance part of that too, and we're focused on that.
Great. All right, so let's shift gears into some of the nuances of what American is doing. And of course, we've seen American in the news for a year now. It's actually their 1 year anniversary since they made the move to remove 40% of the content. And then later in December, as you all remember, there was this release of the Advantage Business Program. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little while. But essentially what that did was that replaced Business Extra. And it also gave it put a limit on how companies can earn points unless they were booking direct on A.com or through an NDC channel. So the point redemption or the point ability, the earning capability for companies changed. And so in January, analysis that was being done by Amtrav showed that there was savings of upwards of $100 per on 40% of the content when people were booking direct. And then this year after Q1, you kind of had a full year's worth of data here, where they were talking about things like, hey, it's not just $100, it's actually $128. And oh, by the way, it's not 40%, it's actually 52%. So you see this variation. And I think if you look at the trajectory here, it's all going in the upwards direction, meaning that more fares that are NDC fares are lower than non-NDC fares. And the discrepancy, of course, as you can see, is upwards of $200 at the high end. And then on the low end, somewhere around the $75 number, but generally between $100 to $150, which is quite a bit of money, right? So if you're a traveler and you're going on a corporate booking tool and then you're simultaneously going to A.com and you want to do a comparison, which we know business travelers love to do that. I think they spend a lot of time trying to do that. This is the reality of the market, right? And this is the reality of what American has done. So Paula, how does a travel manager keep up with all of this? And have you had any inquiries from travelers that are saying, oh, by the way, I went on A.com and I found a cheaper fare?
That is why we're an early adapter to Concur Travel of Evolution. It's not I mean, Concur has some work to do on that. But we felt like we had no choice but to turn it on because we were having so much noise in this area. And just having it on for 2 months, we're saving upwards of $100,000 just on the NDC fares based on the average fare. So we're seeing the savings already, and it's really quieted down I could get it here less expensive. We don't do basic economy, but we do show it in the tool so that people can see that yes, that is a lower fare, but this is why. So that's helped us as well.
Great. And then, of course, from an earning points perspective, we all have the news of May 1st is no longer the date. It's now July 11th. And so if a traveler wants to earn points, they have to book direct or through a preferred agency or via Advantage Business. And then, of course, we see the impact on corporate travel with increased bookings expected on American Airlines and then the need for agencies to upgrade. So, Louise, why do you think American extended their date from May 1st to July 11th?
I mean, I think the statements that have been made by American, as well as the press coverage that's come out the past few days, makes it pretty clear. Obviously, there were a lot of TMCs that showed big progress and commitment and investment. And I think in the end, that convinced American to move the deadline back because, if the TMC still hadn't, moved the needle as far as what American was looking for, I think they would have kept the deadline. But I think they're optimistic, based upon what they've said, that a lot more TMCs will make the threshold if they just gave it a little more time. Do we think they'll extend that deadline again? Absolutely not. I think that they've held firm on so much the past 18 months that, one time extending the deadline for a very good reason, I think makes a ton of sense, but I wouldn't say it fits what they've been trying to do in the traction to offer another extension. So, yeah.
Okay. We have some questions from our audience, so let's hammer a couple of these out. So somebody says that yesterday they heard at an event that NDC is a temporary gateway for airlines to get out of the GDSs completely. Thoughts?
So we do a lot of research in this regard. And I think it's a stretch to say that is the end game. I think we have a long way to go before that would prove out. But let's remember, some of the GDSs are in the airline hosting business, right? So this EDIFACT isn't their only channel, right? And also keep in mind that when you have hundreds of airlines, it's very unlikely that the airlines have a plan. There's antitrust. I mean, there's reasons why the airlines have to keep walls up between what they say to each other, right? So I don't know. I think that's a bit extreme. Do I think that some airlines will leave? Yes. Do I think that volume will dramatically shift, continue to shift to the GDS NDC and the .com channels? Yes. But I don't see, airlines completely coming out of the GDS. You also have to remember in certain points of sale, it would be harder to do that than in others. So yeah, that's our prediction right now.
Agreed. Another question, this is for you, Paula. Do travel managers see enough value in the TMCs to close the profit and loss gap enough so that they can survive? Because obviously TMCs are dealing with increased costs for servicing and developing NDC related initiatives. And of course, at the same time, revenue is being reduced. So do you see enough value in the TMCs?
Our TMC we value more than anything. I mean, if we needed to pay a little bit more, we would. We've been working with our TMC to make sure that they're able to meet any demands that we have currently. Because just because you can book an NDC fare on Concur doesn't mean it can be serviced that way. So the value is really in the back end and the service, and they're extension of your team. And I don't know one travel manager that has a budget to hire 15 more people on their staff to do what the agency does. So if we needed to cover part of that, I'm sure it's a conversation that you can have.
Great. And one other question here. Do you think fares will rise because of one content source versus multi-channel? I think this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, Louise, right? Where,
Yeah.
multi-channel seems to be the direction.
I don't know that I would make a correlation that directly. I think fares are going to rise, yes. I think that there's so many intermediaries involved that there isn't ever going to just be one channel. And I think that, services like Kayak and Google will exist in the marketplace. So many of us go on to one of those searches before we go onto the airline's website, right? And corporate travelers do that all the time too, before they go into Concur or Get There or Citric, whoever they're using. So yeah, I mean, I don't see a direct correlation between the channels and the fares going up, because there's still plenty of ways to do a search and figure out what airline might be doing what. But I think fares are going up in general, and we know that from the various studies that have been published by GBTA and many others. So yeah, unfortunately, fares are on the rise either way.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and and by the way, I forgot to bring this up. Sorry about this. But basically, this talks about the preferred agency criteria, right? So that criteria date, of course, has changed to June 5th, where the minimum requirements of through the NDC channel was 30%. And a lot of people are questioning, and this was mentioned in the Beat article, 30% of what? Is it American fares? American tickets? Is it all tickets? And then, of course, we see some of the dates that have been not changed yet, which is the 50% threshold and the 70% threshold. It's really one of the things I saw on the American Airlines website is this idea that the 2024 agency program ends on June 30th, 2025. I didn't quite understand that piece, though it says it very clearly at the bottom of that screenshot there, where they talk about this. So this is a little bit of a unknown or a not so sure scenario that's playing out here. All right, let's move over to risk. And Todd, we still know you're here, so please know that we know that you're there. I know that a lot of the conversation was focused on travel, but really, for me, I don't think that we can talk about travel without talking about risk. And risk programs, of course, have to keep up with all the changes that are happening on the travel side. And at Wabtec, you're kind of looking at everything from a risk perspective. So do you have any concerns about the changes that American Airlines is making these days, and what impact to your risk programs do you see happening?
Yeah, if you asked me that question a year and a half ago, I'd have a completely different answer. And that was, I have no control. Now we have, have total control, but much, much better than where we were. And I say that one is, we changed our travel management company just here in the last month. That helps. But we also have, other controls once that person lands, if you will, and whether it's in country, there's a lot of hazards in country that we have to consider, not just, going out of country where we are. So I guess that to answer your question, I see this more as an opportunity to set ourselves, our company, Wabtec, apart from a lot of other companies, because we'll offer this duty of care mentality, whether you're working in your scope of employment or you're on vacation. I think that's really important. If you're going, I'll give you a good illustration. It didn't happen to a Wabtec employee, but we use a tool called Alert Media. We have International SOS. We've got Traxo and so on. But we were able to funnel all these, no matter where they come through, so we know where people are going ahead of time. But then once they're there, we can offer tools like real quick in 15 seconds when that crazy nut in Las Vegas was up in a hotel room, shooting at people down in the country music festival. There was a guy with his family, and they heard what they thought was fireworks, and they said, "Oh, come on, let's go down. There's something going on down in the park," and it was gunfire. But he got an alert that said, "Don't go near this park. There's a police action going on," and they said, "Oh, yeah, we better not go." Now, we're all in this business to sort of, save money, but there are things we can do to save lives. Deliberate pause there. And so it's a serious thing about putting people on a plane, whether it's a plane or a taxi cab, whether they're in Guinea or Sydney. We have responsibility to them, whether they're in the course and scope of employment or they aren't. And that's the challenge, and I'm up to it. I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think that a lot of times in travel, we kind of want to separate personal and business from each other. There's some coin terms, blended travel, leisure travel, however you want to coin it. I think from a risk perspective, it's important to, I mean, you don't care whether the employee is on a personal trip or a business trip or a combination of, you just care that you know that they're there and you can take care of them regardless of how they booked it and where they booked it or even the purpose of the trip.
Exactly. Whether a person falls off of a ladder painting a window at work or they do it at home, if they're not there to fill their need, their function, we're at a loss. So why not protect them 24/7? So if somebody is on a vacation and they forget their blood pressure medication, they can pick up a number. It's on a Sunday morning. They can call that number and find out where they can get a prescription. I think that's a pretty neat additive when you're looking to want to get a job at Wabtec or the other 250 companies that are part of this webinar.
Well, great. All right. And so let's come back to what can somebody do, right? So here we are in this world that with American Airlines, and of course, there are a couple of scenarios that are playing out here. And if your agency is on the preferred list that we talked about, right, the American list that's going to be coming out in June, then that's a great situation to be in. I think that if your company has a corporate contract, that's also a great situation to be in. And I think that people that are in that scenarios are probably saying, well, I don't have to really think about this too much. But I present the question of, if the above is not true, then what do you do? Or what if the above changes, right? So today your TMC is on the list, tomorrow they're not on the list, or they don't quite accomplish their thresholds that they're required to accomplish. And with all of this, my question then becomes, do corporate contracts matter? And so, Louise, what do you think about that?
So of course, corporate contracts matter because we derive value from them, of course, but we also have to realize that a large part of the market doesn't have a contract with American in particular, right? A lot of companies don't have a contract with everybody, or they're not big enough to have a contract with anybody. So the airline.com business sites are very helpful because generally you can sign up and participate in those. So I do think it's a pretty big issue, but if we think years in advance, to us, the key to this whole thing is payment. If you get the right payment program in place now, then your travelers cannot chase points through channels. If they're mandated to use a certain payment vehicle, especially if it's a central billing type payment vehicle or a virtual payment. We were just with a company last week. It's a travel company actually, and someone in the value chain that's just mandated a new payment that's centrally billed. And it has automatic reconciliation in it, so there's no extra administration time. And travelers cannot be reimbursed if they use their own form of payment. So that helps, quite a bit to channel everything back into the managed channel. But in reality, a lot of companies don't qualify for deals anyway, and American has pooled them. And let's also remember that for the past 10, 15 years, we've had this push-pull where the companies want deals, but they don't meet the commitments. And then the airlines don't want to pull the deals because they want to be nice. So I think in today's day and age, these contracts are changing so much that relying on the fact that your TMC or your deal will be in place isn't a plan. You have to think further in advance, and payments might be one way to control the channel.
Yeah, and Paula, what about you? Corporate contracts, do they matter?
They matter a great deal, but I will tell you, I could probably go back to my email and tell you exactly what day American sent out the email about not getting your points, because my email went crazy because our associates don't know if we have a contract or not. All they know is we're in Charlotte and they fly American Airlines and they're not going to get their points. And now that's a concern for them. So we had to do a lot of educating on for our staff to let them know that we do have a corporate contract and we are covered. And they really do matter because it's not just the points, they cover other things too, whether it's priority boarding or whether it's not being able to get displaced from from a flight. All of that's included on that. So we did a lot more education on our contract so that people would know they're fine, because everybody was upset about that.
Yeah.
One thing we have to remember, just because having a deal gets you the points today, does not mean that having a deal is going to guarantee your points forever. So that's why we're saying that, the co-brand cards already change the number of points a traveler gets. If I use my loyalty co-brand card, I get a lot of stuff. And if I use my corporate card, I do not, right? So weaning travelers off of that individual card at all is one of the ways you can start to think about, avoiding the roller coaster that is this problem. But, the inevitability of the airlines proceeding down a path where, the points are dramatically different in channels is likely. Whether it happens in 2 months or 10 years, who knows? But it's something we need to get ahead of and think through.
Yeah, and then I kind of look at, if you're not one of the people above with the green check boxes, then Advantage Business does become an option for you, right? So one of the things that I just want to kind of iron out for everybody, just so everybody knows this, is that the Advantage Business program, I mean, we at Traxo are signed up on it, and it's very simple. Travel manager signs up, invites travelers. They even have a unique link that you can just send out in an email blast for people to enroll. And what this does is it changes the dynamics of how AA.com performs. Where the traveler today is not presented with personal or business, is this a personal trip, is it a business trip? But once you're enrolled on Advantage Business, your login with American Airlines now displays unique choices that you don't see otherwise. And of course, the company with that gets the best price, the corporate award miles, and then the traveler, of course, receives their points and miles. So for those of you on the call today that don't have a preferred agency that's on the preferred list or don't have a corporate contract, I really suggest looking into the Advantage Business Program as a means to be able to capture the best scenario possible for your travelers. And I think that your travelers will appreciate that quite a bit. And of course, we at Traxo do capture, right, any bookings that travelers do make on these portals. So it brings you complete visibility into all your travel. So we are offering anybody on the call that's interested 60-day free usage of Traxo. So please do talk to our sales team, and they're more than happy to help you with that process. So definitely suggest you look into that and definitely get into a conversation with us. So in closing out, we're kind of at the end now here, so wanted to just bring everybody together here. So a few things that I prepared here, and I'm going to ask each person on the panel to give me their comments on anything additional they'd like to talk about. But essentially what we're saying is, talk to your TMC, ask them, are they NDC ready and your OBT? When do they expect to be on American's preferred list or not? Are they going to be ready for you? Now we have 60 extra days, right? So I think we should use that 60 extra days from American Airlines perspective to our advantage. And then, be ready for your travelers to go outside the program. American Airlines is very strong on their messaging. Even if I book a trip on Concur and I view my trip on A.com, I'm presented with this direct message booking that comes up, right? So I think that your travelers are definitely going to try to figure out, they've been trying to figure out a way out of the travel programs for a long time. So this is just another way for them to do it with a lot more ease. And so, they'll worry about their miles, they'll book direct. And so for anybody who is thinking about these things, we're definitely interested in helping you solve this problem. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that, you got to think beyond American Airlines, right? And we talked a little bit about this earlier today. So these are the three things I'm going to put out there. Louise, we'll start with you. What other thing would you like to add that people on this call should be thinking about?
I'd like to just elaborate on something that I said before. Everybody's checklist says, call everyone else and ask them what to do. And I think the corporate programs need to look internally, just like Paula did. Figure out, what is your policy? Where do you want to go with it? What's your payment program? What's your expense tool? How do they all integrate? Because we're asking the suppliers to give us answers when we don't even know what's in our own house sometimes. And so I think that's the biggest pointer that I give to clients, because a lot of times you could be limited as far as your options by your own internal situation. So to give yourself the maximum flexibility, take stock in what you already have and what you're doing.
Great. Todd, what's your takeaway?
Yeah, it's the last bullet point. I think beyond American Airlines, I touched on it earlier, but there's been 3 times since we've partnered together, Aash, that we had a problem and Traxo solved it. So as we come down the line, I can paraphrase this even better. We're very good at asking or coming up with ways of making corrective actions when something happens. But I use the term, keep asking what if to keep you from asking what happened. So if we're always thinking we're making these corrective actions, that just means we missed it up front. And what's so key about this is to knowing where people are going and when they're going before they go. Kind of sounds simple, but this is a tool. If the TMC misses it, Traxo picks it up, and we can be ahead of that game. And no matter what happens, thinking beyond American Airlines, I think we're positioned to react to it preventatively.
Spoken like a true risk professional. Paula, final words from you.
You can't be complacent. We just reviewed our policy. We started looking at what was going to be happening over the next 12 to 18 months and how are we going to incorporate that into it. Not just the policy, we looked at the program. We are now a client with Traxo. And it's what Todd said. We have to know where they are before they get there so that we know how to react once they get there. So you just really have to continue to evolve your program. You cannot be complacent.
Great. And I know that the audience has been very aggressive with questions, and I apologize that we're not going to be able to get to all of them, and we're a little bit over time anyway. So we will answer your questions directly. So please do know that your questions have been recorded, and we're definitely going to follow up with you on that. So with that, I want to close out today and just thank everybody for attending today's webinars. I want to thank my amazing panelists. Thank you so much for all your insights, for your help in trying to help everybody try to figure out and navigate through this very, very chaotic world of American Airlines. And we believe that everybody can agree that there's a high probability for supply direct bookings. And I think that this is where Traxo can help. So if you're curious to learn more, We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everybody, for joining today, and we appreciate you and look forward to seeing you on the next Office Hours webinar. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.